Good day everyone, this is John Murray here from Creative 3D. This tutorial will be covering how this Pokemon ball was created in Plasticity. If you want to be able to download these objects or the scene file, or just want to support my channel, then join my Patreon page linked below. My Patreon page will provide the Plasticity object as well as an OBJ object to bring into Blender, also a blend file from Blender. So let's get modeling. Okay, so I'm going to select this square. I'm going to hit the delete key, get rid of that. I'm going to actually create a sphere right in the center. Make sure the grid snap is on. I'm going to go ahead and bring that out to 1 meter exactly. Say OK. Now we're going to actually create another sphere, which is a little bit of distance away. And go ahead and let it go to 1, but we're going to actually select this at 0.94. Say OK. Alright, so there's that. Say OK. Now we're going to go back to the x-axis. We're going to create a square section here, a rectangle. We're going to zoom in, take this grid snap off, select the center here, bring this out so it's centered, and I'm going to change this to 2.25. Say OK. So there's that. Now we're going to actually select the sphere. We're going to hit this cutter tool, and I'm going to select this. You can see this outline with the block there, so you know it's cutting. Say OK. So now the next step is we're going to hide one of these balls and hide the bottom section of the ball. I'm going to actually select this sphere and we're going to move it with the G key. So let's go ahead and put the snaps back on. That way it goes to each of these squares, centers off of this. There we go. Say OK. So now we're going to select the outer shell and the inner sphere. Hit the Shift key, hit Q, keep tool, say OK. Hit the center section now. Now hit the smaller sphere. Again, hit Q and go ahead and keep tool, say OK. So now you can actually hide this one on top, and you can actually unhide this bottom section. So select this. Now hit again the sphere, hit Q again, and this time you just say OK. Okay, so basically what we've done here is we cut everything through, including the top. And that's the objective, is to get it to look like that. So now let's go ahead and get rid of the curve, delete this, select this section in the center here, and we're going to scale this down. So we're going to hit the S key, and one thing we can do is we can select this right here, bring it in, drop it. I'm going to put this at 0.96. Again here, same thing, 0.96, so it's even throughout. Say OK. Okay, so there's that. One thing that we will need to do is kind of cut this again, because this is not going to be right. So if we go to the top view, we can create the sphere again. Again, let it drop, put 0.94. Say OK. Hit the G key, bring it back through. And one thing we can do now is get closer. Go ahead and hide. Say OK first. Go ahead and hide this top section. Hide. So now we can select this again, and then this, and now hit the Q key. Say OK. That way it's completely solid around. It's actually even throughout. That's what we're trying to do here. Okay, so there's that. So let's go back to the X. We're going to create a disk. One thing, I'm going to take this grid snap off and right click. I'm going to go ahead and escape from that. I'm going to hit this and just hide it for now, so I can make sure I can select this centered. So hit the origin, bring this out, and I'm going to make this at 3. So I'm going to drop it, go ahead and select it 0.3, hit enter. Okay. So one thing we're going to do here is we're going to now select the face tool here, and we're going to hit extrude with the E key, bring it through. There we go. Say OK. So let's go ahead and unhide this as well. So now I'm going to actually combine these back together again, just to make it easier to cut this properly. So we're going to hit all 3 of those, hit the Q twice, say OK. That's one object. Now the objective is to actually take this and cut it. I'm going to go ahead and select this and select that. I'm going to go ahead and cut it. Let's just do a Q key. I'm going to hit the keep tool, say OK. And that's it for that. So now if I hide this, you'll see that I got a perfect solid hole through that. And there's this section here, right? So what I'm going to do to get this working is I'm going to go ahead and select this and hide this. So again, I'm going to go out a little bit, hit the grid snaps, hit the sphere again. I'm going to make this 1, but I'm actually going to put this at 0.94. Say OK. And what I'm going to do now is go to the Z axis and select. So the G key is going to snap it all the way through. There we go. So what I'm going to do now is say OK. Select this object. Select this object. I'm going to hit the Q key. Say OK. So basically I cut exactly at 0.94, and then I'm going to cut 0.96. So let's go and do this again. Hit the sphere. Again, let it drop. This time it's going to be 0.96. Say OK. Same thing, hit the G key, move it in to the center off of this. Okay, say OK. Hit this again, and this time we're going to hit the Q key, and I'm going to hit the Shift key this time. Say OK. So now I'm going to select this and delete it. Hit this one, delete it. And now I got this perfectly rounded cut on this. So now if I hide this, you can have exactly a perfect rounded section there. This is to say this looks too small and you want this to bring this a little higher. You can go back in to X-axis and we can select again this tool here. Originally we had this at, I think it was, take the grid snaps off again. Hit this at 0.25. So this, or 225. Let's say you want to make this a little bit wider. Let's say 3. I'm going to select this out. Let's hit 3. So you can always go back and change the dimensions. So one thing I'll do is I'll select this. And then I'm going to actually select the cutter. Say this. Say OK. And then I can go in here, select this. Select the cutter. Select this. Say OK. And that way this whole thing gets kind of deleted. And now what we can do is just basically take these two sections here and hide them. And what you're going to do to make that that fix is we're going to actually create another sphere. So we can get rid of these two things here. There's two curves. Hit this. Bring it out. I'm going to do 0.96. Say OK. And now what we can do is select it, hit the G key, move it in place. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to cut this section out. So say OK. So select this first, then this. Hit the Q key, hit the Shift Q. Say OK. And then you can select these outer sections. Hit the ball. Delete. And there you go. So now if I hide this and that, now you got a little bit bigger section, right? So it's another way to remanipulate something. I think that's a little bit better. I like it. The height is better. I think it was too short before. Okay. 0.25. So I'm going to just let go of that and go ahead and enter it. 0.25. Say OK. And what I'm going to do now is basically, this is going to be flat, just like it is now. It's kind of right on the edge there. So I'm going to go ahead and extrude it out. So I'm going to make sure I'm on the face tool. Select it, hit the E key, and then move this through. Okay. Say OK. That's created that intersection now. Now, I'm also going to manipulate this, of course, but what I've done is I'm going to create another sphere to cut that, of course. So I could do that now. Let's go ahead and go to the x-axis. Go ahead and sphere. And we're going to also put back the grid snaps. I'm going to create the 1 meter, but this time again, we're going to go to 0.94. Say OK. So we're going to hit the G key. And it's going to move each 1 meter. And it'll center off of this. Make sure it's all the way centered. And we can zoom in now. Use the right mouse to kind of maneuver. Okay, so there's that. So I'm going to now take this snap grid off. Use the left mouse button. And one thing this thing I could keep, of course, but I'm just actually going to move this out of the way. Hit the G key, cancel. I'm actually select it, G key, and I'm going to move this out. Say OK. I'm going to reuse this again. So, all right. So go back to Object Tool. We're going to select this now, and then we're going to select that inner sphere, the one that you just did, which is the 102. So hit this one. This one, and hit the Q key. Cancel. See, if you got something completely closed off, you can't see what you're doing, it will actually add it. So what I normally do is I hide something. So we're going to hide this. Make sure that one's hidden. All right, so we can hide that. We're going to first select that. Then we're going to select the sphere. And we're going to hit the Q key. Now what that's doing is it's cutting this out. Say OK. There we go. That's what you want. So it actually cuts that out. That way when it's in the inside, it'll work out better. All right, so now you can show these. All right, so the fun part. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this. So we're going to go to the Y-axis. And what I want to do is I want to create some cuts into this so it's easier. So I want to go ahead and hit the sphere key, hit the center key. I'm going to bring this out, say, I think 1.25 would be good. So I'm going to hit 0.125, hit enter. That way it's exactly at a distance that you might want. And then now I'm going to create another one that's going to be a little bit bigger than that one. So we can go here again. This time we'll go like 1.40. So 0.140. Sorry. So okay. So that will be like a cutter. Again, do this again. What we're doing is we're going to create a bunch of things here just to make it easier. So I'm going to do something like that. Again, say OK. Let's do this again. This time a little bit bigger. Okay. One more time. And then we'll do something like that. Okay. So now what the idea of that is, we're going to hit this face tool, and I kind of want to just hide these. So I'm going to hide this, hide that. And the idea of this is to go in, and I can get rid of this now. This is just in the way. Line tool, select it, delete it, hit the delete key. Okay, now I'll use the face tool. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to use this to cut through. I kind of want to make another section. So let me just go ahead and hit the center here. Kind of like over there. Say OK. Now let's do this again. Hit this, and that. I'm going to move this out. So this piece you can hide. That's the confusing part. Anyway, this is your main disk that we're cutting through. So that's selected. Now let's go ahead and hit the face tool again. We're going to hit this, and this. It should do it. And say OK. And we're going to hit the E key. We're going to extrude through. Say OK. Now we're going to hit the G key. We're going to move this back. Say OK. So now we're going to hit the object tool, hit that main disk, and then we're going to hit this other section, this section, this section, and we're going to use the Q key. I'm going to hit Shift Q. So there we go. All right. So now we can delete this back section. We can hit this section, delete, this section, delete. Let's go and hit these as well, delete, delete, delete. And now we can get rid of all these. So select them all, delete. There we go. So what I'm doing now is selecting the face tool, hit all these. Make sure this goes through. So yeah, now you can see what you're doing. Kind of went back about halfway. All right, so that's good. It's okay. All right, so that's your inner ball. All right. So I guess I'd like to make one more section in here just to make it a little bit different. So I'm going to hit the center key again. We're going to bring this up a little bit, just like that. I guess I put it at 0.107. We'll do 0.105. So okay. And now we're going to go in and select, hit the E key, and now you should have a disk going through. There we go. It's solid, so that's good. I'm going to hit the G key, bring it back out, say OK. Basically what I'm doing is I'm going to create this center section that's going to be kind of closer to the edge, not so far apart, just to give it a little variation. So go ahead and select the object tool, hit this section, hit the Q, Shift Q, say OK. Now I'm going to actually delete this section here and this section here. I can get rid of the curve so I see what I'm doing. There we go. I'll let that delete. Let's go ahead and select it again, hit delete. Alright, so that looks good. So let's see what we got so far. I'm going to unhide these. There we go. Quite a bit of variations here, which is good. So now I'm going to actually select the line tool. I'm going to do a fillet on this, and you want to make sure it's in the positive, not the negative when you pull this. So I'm going to go ahead and pull this out. Make this really rounded, this part of it, just because I want to make it kind of blend in properly with the intersection here. One thing I want to do as well is connect this to that. So go ahead and select the object tool, hit this tool, hit this one, and hit the Q twice. There we go. Okay, so let's hide some things. So we're going to hide this section, this section, this section. And what I want to do now is I'm going to go ahead and maneuver this a little bit. So for some reason these are not the way I'd like them. They seem to be off a little bit from each other, just causing a little bit of problem here. So this intersection is not lined up with the edge is. So one way to solve this is to cut this again. So I'm going to use the solid tool and I'm going to go to the x-axis and I'm going to create or unhide one of those balls that I created earlier, which is one of these, and select this one and one of these. So now again, make sure that grid snaps on. Select this, hit the G key, and we're going to maneuver this back exactly where it needs to be. And the objective of this is I need to create another sphere here that will actually cut this properly. So I think right now what I want to do is scale this up. So let's go ahead and do a scale. And again, I'm going to do the whole thing this time. So scale again. And this time I'm going to bring it up. And I want to make this basically 0.2. So we're going to hit 1.2. Go ahead and select this, Control C. And then we're going to put this in one of these. Let's say OK. There we go. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this. I'm going to hit the Q key again, hit the Shift Q, say OK. And now I can delete this outer object. And I can select this outer and hit the G key. Let's just take this snap off. So basically what I created was this little section here. I like that better, just because it's smoother. It doesn't have an edge issue. So I'm going to redo this section here. So I'm going to go ahead and delete that section there. All right, so one thing I like to do is add another area here. I think what we'll do is we'll create another sphere. I mean a circle, sorry, a disk. Let's go back to the Y, see what we're doing. We can hide these cutters. All right, so let's do this again. Hit the disk, center, and we're going to go something like that. Say OK. We're going to do this again. Again, center. And we're going to hit that line right there. Say OK. And what we're going to do now is hit the face tool, select this, and we're going to extrude that through like that. Okay. Now select the object tool, this one, and now hit the one we just created and hit Q and then Shift Q, say OK. So what I'm doing now is I'm redoing this to make it right. So delete that one. Make sure it's only selecting that. Delete that one. Now let's get rid of these lines, these curves. Delete those. All right, so now we got that. Okay, so now select this and we'll hit the face tool. And we're going to extrude that out. So we're going to bring this outward like that. There we go. Now what we can do is select the object tool, this one, and hit the Q key twice. Say OK. There we go. All right, now we can manipulate this better. So go ahead and select this object. And we're going to actually hit the lines. So we're going to hit the inner line. We're going to go in the plus, so it's actually rounded. Something like that. Same thing in here. So make sure you get the right one. It's a very deep one. So again, rounded. Not the negative, plus. It's okay. And now I'm going to do these outer lines. And we're going to do a fillet. So we're going to pull this. Make this round. It's okay. Okay, that's looking a lot better. Same thing with these bigger sections. I'm going to actually add a little bit of variation here. So I'm going to use the chamfer first. So it's negative. Say okay. Then select these 4 sections. And then also do this as a fillet. Okay. There's that. I'm going to also take this and we're going to do that again as a fillet. Just so it's away from that. Say okay. And this one I'm going to use, actually that was a, sorry, chamfer. This one I'm going to use a fillet. Much more rounded. Say okay. I'm going to take this and this. Select both of these. And now I'm going to do a fillet. Make that round. Say okay. And then we got these two sections here. And fillet. Say okay. Alright. That would be kind of cool is to go in and add some other variations to this piece here. So I'm going to create kind of like a little bit of a cutter, I guess you call it. So I'm going to go ahead and put this back on the y-axis. I'm going to zoom in on this a little bit. And I'm going to go ahead and create a box. So I'm basically going to cut it right there. And I'm going to shrink this down. So I'm going to hit the S key. Bring this down. Something like that. Say okay. I'm going to hit the point tool now. Give it some edge to it. Hit the scale key again. Something like that. I'm going to also go back here and hit the S key and go up. Just to have a more of an angle like that. There we go. Okay. So there's that. I'm going to hit the face tool. Select it. I'm going to hit the E key. I'm going to pull this through. Close to that. Just like that. Alright, say okay. One thing I want to do though is make everything a little bit more rounded so it just will work better. I'm going to go ahead and select these sections here and do the fillet. Say okay. These as well. Do a fillet so I can do one plus, not the negative. Okay. Say okay. And one of the things I'm going to do here is move it out just a smidgen. Bring this out. We'll rotate it inside, so I'm going to use the blue section here. Kind of add an angle. Kind of like that. That looks good. One thing I'm going to also do is go ahead and select this section. Since everything's now rounded, you can pull this out and do a fillet all the way around. And that way it's nice and rounded inside. Alright, so that's that. So go back to the y-axis. And we're going to select this. First of all, let's get rid of this. It's going to be in your way. Select that. And we're going to rotate this through. Alright, so we're going to use now the radio ray. Select the center here. And I'm going to do quite a few here. I want a lot more detail. I'm going to pull this out. So it's kind of centered. I think 36 will be good. Say okay. And now that I got all these selected, I can go back here, select this one first. Make sure you get all these selected. So there'll be this one. So hit the shift key, hit that one. Just go ahead and go all the way down. Now hit the Q key. And for some reason I didn't get them all, so cancel. I gotta make sure I get all these, so let's go ahead and filter down. Alright, so that's good. So hit the Q key again. Now I got all selected. And say OK. There we go. That gives it another different look to it. Kind of like that. Alright, so that's that. So now I'm going to create a section for the center here. So we're going to actually hit, again, this tool. This time we're going to go to x-axis, and I'm going to go ahead and hit snap to grid for now, just so I can start it here. I do not want it to continue though, so we're going to make it about, I don't know, 0.12 something, be fine. 0.015, say okay. Alright, so there's that. So on this one, I'm going to actually create these little rounded things on the top of this button. So I'm going to extrude this. So make sure you're on the face tool, select it, hit the E key, make sure it's on extrude. There we go. That's good. Say okay. Let's go back to the Y, and we're going to go ahead and hit G key. We're going to move this more into the center. Doesn't have to be exact, but that's fine. Okay, there's that. Now I find this is a little bit too big for me. I think I want to scale it down just a little bit. So I'm going to go back to the object tool, make sure this is selected, hit the S key twice, and bring it down 0.7. So that's good. Say okay. So I'm going to go ahead and hit the Shift D key, and I'm going to move this upward, give it a little bit of space. Again, hit the Shift D again. Same thing. A little bit of space. Something like that. Say okay. Now, what I could do is, I don't want this to be bigger than this whole thing, so let's go and do this tool again on the center. I'm going to go something like almost 0.8, somewhere in there. Okay, so that's that. So say okay. So now, go back to object tool, select that one, this one, this one, and we're going to now cut it with this one. See how it cuts all the way through those? Say okay. Now we can delete these sections here. Just hit the delete key. And what we could do now is go ahead and get rid of these curves. Those two curves. Okay, so let's go ahead and select this. Hit the Shift key. Select all 6 of these. And we're going to pull this out so they're rounded like that. Okay? Say okay. Now what I'm going to do is select the object tool again. This and this. Both of those two, hit the Shift key. We're going to hit the mirror key. And we're going to select the green section so that does the opposite. There we go. So now let's go and select all 5 of these. Go back to the Y. I'm going to bring this in. So hit the G key. Use the green section here. I'm going to cut into this. So let's see how that's going to look. So a little bit farther into this looks good. So let's say okay. Now hit the center section here. They're all selected. Hit Q, Q. There we go. Now if you want to make this look like it's part of this button, so it's more smoother, you can just select each of these lines. And we're going to do a fillet. And we're going to bring this in like that. Here we go. One thing I want to make sure I do is I want to make sure some of these are separate objects. So this is a separate object. So if I hide this, this whole thing goes away, right? So that's good. Now, if I bring it back in, you see it. So I think I want to make sure that when I hide this again, I'm going to cut this out. Actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the object here. Go back to the Y. I'm going to cut that out completely right to that center there. Say okay. Now if I go back in, hit this object, go back to the Y, hit that cut solid, use this, say okay. That should do it. Now delete this. You could delete this. There we go. Looks better. I think one thing I'm going to do here, so that's one section. I'm going to also just get some more rounded edges. Bring this down a little bit. There we go. Okay, now let's hide that, see how that looks. Okay, so if I push this in now, it'll go in and won't see another object in the back of that. All right, so there we go. So let's go ahead and unhide these, see what we got now. All right, it's coming together. That's your main piece. This is your focal piece that you want it to look really nice. I think it's coming along. All right, so that's that. So let's focus now on the outer ball itself. So I'm going to go ahead and go to the y-axis, and we're going to create some basic cuts along the side. I've seen some other people create some of this stuff. It looks really cool, kind of like some of the things they've done. So I'm going to kind of emulate some things I've seen. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and just create one line off of there. And right click. Now that I've created this, I'm going to go ahead and create this. I'm going to do something like this, like this, like this. Right click. So I'm going to select these two lines. So go ahead and go to Line Tool. Select them and hit the J key. This will join them together. So now when you select it, it's one section. One thing I'd like to do is go ahead and make this rounded. So we're going to select this here. We'll just go a little bit like that. I think I'll bring this down just a little bit more. G key. Like that. There we go. See how this looks. I'm going to go ahead and do this too. Just hit the fillet key again. I don't want it past that, so there we go. All right, so that's that. So let's do this again. Go back to the Y key. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the line. We'll hit the mirror, hit the opposite side, and say OK. All right, see how this is going to look. So we'll select this. We'll hit the cutter tool, hit that, say OK. Same thing, select it again, cutter tool, hit this, say OK. All right, so what is that going to look like? Let's go ahead and select these two curves, delete them. Okay, I think that looks better. Nice edge on there. And I think it'd be kind of cool to add some variations to this. Now that I've created this, so I'm going to actually add in some lines. Actually, if I go from here, just bring it out just a little bit. Okay, same thing over here. This way I can get a nice line from here straight out. Something like that. I think that would look good. Right click. Okay, we can get rid of those spheres. This help to do that to help me line this up the way I like it. Alright, so let's go ahead and hit the edge tool again. Select this, hit shift key, say J key to join them. Now we're going to hit the points. Again, I don't want it too sharp. Just going to hit the fillet. This becomes sometimes a little tough at this distance, especially if they're sharp. So if you can't really get it to say escape, I would suggest getting closer to it or do one at a time. Let's do this one. There we go. Something like that. Also hit B key. Something like that. There we go. I think that looks good. And we can actually select that now. Just go ahead and go to Face Tool. We're going to go ahead and select this. And one thing I could do is either cut it or just extrude it. So I'm going to hit the E key. Go ahead and extrude all the way through. Say OK. Just bring it back through. Get rid of this curve. All right, one thing you can do is do that. We can do mirror. Say OK. Select that. Select this. Q key. Shift Q. Same thing here. So we'll say OK. Hit this. Hit that. Hit the Q key. Shift Q. Say OK. So let's go ahead and delete these sections here. Delete. You can hide this. See what you're doing. Let's go ahead and get rid of this. Delete. Let's get rid of, well, that didn't work, so that's okay. We can actually just go here and say delete. Hit both of these. Mirror that. So you get exactly what you want. There we go, it's done. So with these selected, you can go in. I'm just going to do one at a time. So I got that whole line selected. I'll set phase to 0.02. Just select it. Just Control C so you don't forget. Say OK. That's too far. Control Z. Let's just go ahead and select it. Bring it in. I think we'll just use the same number we got here. Control C. Say OK. There's that. Then we'll go back here. Same thing. Bring it in just a little bit. Or select this section here. Control V. This way it's exact. Say OK. Alright, there's that. Okay, so now I'm going to create some other things. One thing I'm going to do is center this, so definitely go onto the y-axis. And I'm going to use the actual grid snaps again, just because I'm trying to make this so it's exactly 45 degrees. So I'm going to go ahead and select here and here, right click, and do the basically mirror this opposite side. Say OK. I'm going to hit the line tool again, select this to that, right click, and I'm going to select, of course, all these lines. So hit the line tool, hit the shift key, and we're going to actually do a join. So join. Okay. So one thing I'm going to also do is maybe extend this out a little bit longer. So there's that. One more on this side. Just so I can make sure when I scale this down, it lines up. So select them all again, hit J key. Okay, there we go. So let's go ahead and use the S key twice. Scale it in. I think I want to do something like that for now. G key down. I kind of want to do a cut. I'm going to take this course off, the grid snap. Let's bring this down. I want to make a cut, but on each side of this, and it has to be long enough to go all the way through almost. So I think that looks good. I think we'll go with that. So let's go ahead and go with the point tool. I'm going to select these two areas here. We're going to hit the fillet. So let's just do the B key. Same thing. I'm going to make that somewhat rounded, but not too rounded. Like that. And I'm going to go ahead and create this whole thing so it's actually going to be a closed loop. So there's that. One thing I'll note is that we really don't need these points now, so just go ahead and select the lines. Let's make sure it's all connected. Hit the J key, of course. So once you select it, you see that you got everything connected. Go ahead and hit the points again. You don't need these two, so you can just delete those, because it's just going to add another section there, which you don't need, but you could always do that if you wanted to, of course. But so anyway, I'm going to use the x-axis. I'm going to hit the extrude key, make sure I'm on the face tool. Just go ahead and bring this out something like that. It's a solid, which is good, so that's what we wanted. Now you get rid of this curve. So I'm going to select this object, and I'm going to bring it through. So move it so it's all the way through. Now one thing I'm trying to get is a little bit farther down. So one thing you could do is you could actually select this, the face tool, bring this up just a smidgen, like that. Now what we could do is, again, hit the G key, take that back. I'm going to make sure I hit the object tool. So let's go ahead and say OK. Let's hit the object tool and hit G key again. Let's bring this down. Something like that. Okay, so I kind of like the shape, but I think it's too wide. So I'm going to go ahead and hit the edge here. I'm going to go to the side, and we're going to move this in. So hit the G key. We're going to move this over. So 0.07, I think that looks good. Say OK. Get out of there. Hit this tool. Again. Hit enter. Now let's select this line again. We're going to hit the G key. We're going to move this point. You could do something like 0.83. It's the same thing. 0.83. There we go. So yeah, you do the exact same thing on both sides. If you don't want to do that, you could actually split it and then mirror it again. So let's go ahead and hit enter. Okay, I think that looks better. Kind of like that design. So I'm going to hit this now. I want to add some more detail to this thing, but I want to make sure I cut first. So let's go ahead and use this and rotate it into the center. So let's go and bring this up with the left, sorry, right mouse button. And we're going to rotate this around. So let's rotate. I'm going to hit the V key for the actual pivot. So I can select the center here, like that. And now I could rotate this around so it's exactly centered. I think we'll do something like, I want to do 30 degrees, so I'm going to actually drop that and just hit 3.0. Say OK. Okay, so let's go ahead and select this now, the object tool. Hit this first, then hit this. And we're going to do the same thing. We're going to do a Q. And we'll hit the Shift Q, say OK. And now we're going to actually select this, delete it. And we're going to hide this. And we're going to go in here and select the inner. Go ahead and delete that. Okay. So that looks good. And let's go and unhide it now. So it's kind of what I was looking for. Has a variation between the two. One thing I would like to do is add some more detail to this. So one thing is that I could say is that I know it's 30 degrees, so it makes it easy. So let's go and hide this one. Let's select this. We're going to go back to the Y. And we're going to rotate this again. So let's go ahead and hit the rotate key. Hit the V key. We're going to select it on the center. And I'm going to go back 90 degrees. 30 degrees, I'm sorry. Minus 30 degrees. So let's just do 30. There we go. So it's centered. Okay, so I'm going to get in here and actually cut some other sections in here. So let's go ahead and do something like this. Straight up. Kind of add an angle. Back in. Right click. Going to mirror this. Say OK. So now that we'll select it, I'm going to hit the J key to combine them together. Now if you hit the line tool, they all select. So let's go ahead and hit the point tool. Points. We can get rid of this one now. There's no need for this. So delete that. Select these two right here. So So we're going to do a fillet here. So hit the B key. I'm going to go ahead and get a little bit of roundness there. Say OK. I think that looks good. I think I'm also going to do a another square here. So we're going to bring this up. Kind of center that. Say OK. Hit these 2 points. Go ahead and hit the S key. Scale this up a little bit just to give it some variations. Say OK. Alright, so that's good. So we're going to go back to the object tool. We're going to select this. We're going to hit the cutter tool. We're going to go ahead and cut that through. Say OK. And the next thing we're going to do is also select this section here. And we're going to also use, first of all, I want to get a little bit of roundness on these as well. So hit the B key again to fillet that. Say OK. I think that will look cool. Let's go ahead and hit this again. And this time we're going to hit the cutter again, which is this tool. Say OK. There we go. Okay. That's cool. So we can get rid of these curves, delete those. And what we can do is we can actually go in and bring those that section inward. So let's go ahead and select the face tool, and we're going to bring this in kind of like that. I think that will look cool. Well, one thing I could also do while we're working on this is change these edges so they're not so sharp, because it will cause a problem. One thing I would suggest that you hide something first. So use the H key so you know what you're doing. You might select the other object by accident while you're doing this, so let's just do one at a time. All 4 of these. Now you can bring this in, make sure it's on the positive so it's rounded, something like that. Say OK. What that does is makes it so it's easier. One thing we got to also do is these inners, because otherwise it won't work. Hit the Shift key, bring these in, plus, there we go. Say OK. Alright, so now that we did that, we can go in here and I'm not even going to mess with that other one because it's not ready yet. So just a little bit of roundness to it. Say OK. Cool. One thing I'm going to do here, just to make it simpler, is just delete this section here. Use this, do a mirror. So again, you can hit the Alt X if you want. Make it simpler. Say OK. One thing I will do is go ahead and scale these in a little bit. They're way too far out. Scale this in too, as well as that. So say OK. Something like that. There we go. Okay, let's hide this. This one you can hide. Get back to Object Tool, hide. There we go. Okay, I think that looks pretty cool. Another thing I got to do is fix these little edges here, because again, when I try to make it more rounded, it's not going to do what I think it's going to do. All 4 of these sections here. Let's make this more rounded. Something like not too far out. Say OK. Now that everything's rounded, it'll be easier to make this rounded. So go ahead and select this. Let's go ahead and round it. That looks good. Say OK. Again, I'm going to go in here, select the face tool, bring this up. I'm trying to get it lined up with the other stuff. It just look better once I do this later on. Okay, so that's that. Alright, so I'm good with this. I think it might be kind of cool though to put some type of circles or something on this. Something like that. Okay, kind of followed it that time. Hit the E key. Alright, so now that I created this, I'm going to extrude it back out. So let's go ahead and hit the G key. Bring it upward. Delete the curve. And again, for some reason this object, the edge did not come over. So select it, patch it. It's okay. Select the bottom one, patch, it's okay. Alright, so now I've got one. Let's go ahead and mirror it. Zoom out, hit that, it's okay. Again, we're going to mirror again. So both selected, hit the opposite side, say okay. Alright, so we'll select this one object. Select these. Go ahead and hit Q key, Shift Q. Say okay. Opposite side, hit this. Hit these two. Hit Q, hit Shift Q. Say okay. Now let's delete these outer sections. Delete them. These as well. Okay. Now we can go in and scale that. Use the face tool. Hit both of these. Bring it in. Say okay. Hit the edge tool. Hit both of these. And we're going to use the chamfer. Something like that. It's okay. Now we're going to do the fillet. You can select it. The outers. I'm not going to do the inners, just the outers. And we're going to make sure it's on the positive. A little bit of fillet there. Okay. So that's done. I'm going to actually go back. I'm just going to delete this other side and recreate it with the mirror tool. So I'm going to select all these and then go ahead and hit the mirror. Opposite side, say okay. Cool. Alright, that's it for that. I'm going to select all these. Go to your y-axis. Make sure everything's selected. And now I'm going to rotate it again. And make sure that's on the, hit the V on the center. And go back 30 degrees. Rotate, V, center. Go ahead and type in 30. Now we've done that, we could mirror this to the opposite side, say okay. Cool. So now, one thing I'm going to be doing is I'm hiding this one. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to do the same thing. I got to change this side so this part's cut out. So I'm going to mirror this over. So hit the mirror tool. Go ahead and do that. Say OK. So now that's been done. Select both sides. Hit Q, Q. Say OK. That's one object now. And there you go. So one thing I noticed that this is a little bit too deep. So one thing I could do is go ahead and just bring this up a little bit. Okay. Do the same thing on all these. So it doesn't go through. Say okay. Alright. Same with this other side. Now these are not there, so I gotta just copy it. So go ahead and select the object tool, hit both of these. Actually, if you want to make sure that they're exactly alike, I just delete this one. I think this one's perfectly set, so I'm going to go ahead and mirror this first to the opposite side. Say OK. Mirror again. Opposite side. Say OK. Now it's all aligned. Alright, so I'm going to create a couple more designs on this thing, so make sure this is on the exactly on the center. Right click, so that way I can get this to line up properly. So I'm going to take in a section here, bring it straight up, take about there. I'm going to cut it across about there. Okay, we're going to do the same thing again. Let's go ahead and do a Shift D, do a G, move it over something like that. Now what we're going to do is we're going to use the line tool. Say OK first. I'm going to use the line tool here. Use that one, right click. Again, same thing here. This one to this one, right click. Alright, so now we can select all these. See, it kind of came together as part of this thing is right now. So, okay, what I can do now is basically mirror this over with the line tool. So let's go and do this. Say OK. Again, we're going to hit the mirror tool again. Do opposite, say OK. There we go. Now what we can do is move this whole thing upward. So bring it all the way up. Go back to the Z. And go ahead and hit the trim key. Okay. Now that we've got this, I'm going to hit the T key. Get rid of this one, this one. There we go. Hit the points. Point tools. Let's go ahead and get rid of these. Delete these. That's fine. Go back to the Z. Get rid of these as well. And what we could do now is just select this to that. Right click. Same thing here. This to that. Right click. So let's go ahead and select lines. And I'm going to do all these. Hit the J. And now these should be one object. There we go. Now let's go ahead and hit the points. We're going to do a fillet on these. So we can hit the B key. Bring this out just a smidgen. Something like that. There we go. One thing I suggest that we do is let's bring these out just a little bit more. Okay. And then I'll do this. J, G, upward. There we go. G, to the bottom. That's okay. Okay, there we go. So now we've done this, we can actually extrude this. So hit the E key, go and bring it through. There we go. Get rid of this, these curves, delete those, and hit the object tool. Let's do the mirror. Zoom out a little bit. There you go. Let's go ahead and unhide. Zoom in. Alright, so there's that. So select this one, hit the Shift key, hit Q, Shift Q, say OK. So let's go ahead and select these both, delete them. There we go. Coming together. So now what I suggest that we do is we could just do the face tool on the top sections. Bring those in a little bit. Just like that. I think that will look cool. Now we're going to hit the line tool. Line tool on all four of these areas. Zoom in if you have to. bring this in. Actually, I'm going to go with the fillet. There we go. Cool. Alright, so we can unhide this one. Unhide this. So I'm going to go back to the Y key. Bring this closer. I'm going to go ahead and use the circle tool again. Bring this out. I think we'll go something like 0.40. Okay, something like that. Say OK. And in this situation, I'm going to actually use the actual pipe tool. So now I got that, I want to make sure it's only at 0.2. That will look good. Say OK. And the objective of this is to cut into this top piece. So I'm going to go back to the front view on the Y. And I'm going to cut some of this off. So let's go and use the line tool. I think it would be kind of cool right about here. So just bring it across. Select this. Hit the cut tool. Select this line. Say OK. So this one can go away. Delete that. This is fine. So now I'm going to bring this inward. So it cuts through. So let's go ahead and bring this through. Something like that. Now the problem that this will cause is it will not be, it might work out. What I would suggest on this is to actually cut it a few times. So I'm going to go to the x-axis. I'm going to make sure that's centered, maybe a little bit, about right there. And I'm going to go ahead and select this, this, and hit the Q key. I'm going to keep tool. Okay. So now I'm going to also bring this in just a little bit, bring this out this way actually. So I'm going to hit the G key. Bring this out to it's more like centered of that. Here we go. Say OK. Select this again. Select this again. Hit the Q key and say OK. That way it has a good cut throughout. One thing I will do is select the inner and here. Same with the other side. Actually, I'm going to get rid of these curves. Get out of my way. Actually, don't want to get rid of this one. I need to maneuver that in place. So we're going to go back to the X. Bring this in. Something like right off that there. And this time, we're going to actually add another pipe. And one's good. I'm going to maneuver that back in just a little bit more. Hit the G key. Bring this in a little bit more. Something like that. Cool. There's that. Okay, let's go back. Now we can get rid of these curves. Delete those. So we're going to extend that out a little bit. Say OK. So let's just see if this works. Yeah, that works. Something like that. Control Z. Something's going on here. There's another line here. So sometimes you get an issue where you got lines too close together. This one's causing a problem. So I'm going to fillet this one as well. And the plus. I think make sure it's plus. Do something like that. So now everything's rounded. Hit the shift key. Something like that. All right. Now select these. Let's make this a little bit rounded. First of all, we gotta cut this. Okay, that's not a problem. Let's go back. I'm going to go back to the Y key. I'm going to cut it midway. Use the line tool. Somewhere in here. You're fine. Right click. Select this object. Use the cutter. Hit this. Say OK. So now you can just delete these. This can go. Okay, first this one, then this one. Now let's go ahead and cut into it. To Q. Keep tool. Boom. Alright, so let's go ahead and hit the edge tool here. Here. Let's go ahead and pull this open. Just a smidgen. So it looks like it's going through. Alright, so now I want to do some things on the bottom. So something like this. Something like this. Something like that. I think that will look good. It's kind of lining up with this line. Kind of lines up with that line. And I'm going to mirror this over here. Say OK. Okay, so that they're both selected. Now hit the J key. Go ahead and select it. Hit the point tool. And we're going to give this, so for the center one, of course, I'm going to give this a fillet. So do something like that. We're also going to do a Shift D, bring this down, something like that. Say OK. Let's go ahead and go to the object tool, select this, and we're going to use the cut tool, cut it, say OK. And select this. We're going to use the cut tool again. Select this. Okay. One thing we can do now is select this and use the face tool. And I'm going to shrink this in just a smidgen. Something like that. Okay. So now I've done this and that. I'm going to reconnect them all. So now go ahead and select the object tool. Hit this one, this one, this one. Hit the Q, Q. Say OK. Select this one, that one. Hit the Q, Q. Say OK. So that's one object. Cool. So let's go ahead and go with the lines. Go ahead and go to this. Let's go ahead and make this a bit more rounded. So I'm doing a fillet here. Say OK. And then the inners each side. I can do like an edge here. Let's go ahead and do like a chamfer. I'm going to do a negative. Something like that. Say OK. Now we're going to do a fillet. Bring this closer to see what I'm doing. This will be on the plus this time. Say OK. There we go. Trying to come together. A little bit too much stuff on the bottom. Kind of want to. Centerpiece is the biggest thing. Need to add a little bit of variations to the center. I want to get more of a round effect here. Kind of want to, I think we'll do something similar to the same side here. So I'm going to go back to the front, which is the Y. Hit the circle tool. Let's go ahead and do the same thing here. Do something like this. Say OK. Do this again. Center. I'm going to hit the edge there. Different ways you can do this for sure. Now that I got these selected, I'm going to go ahead so that way it lines up properly. I'm going to go ahead and hit this tool here, hit the extrude. This is going to go into that space, something like that. And then we're going to go back to the Y. I think that's good. Now that I created that, we can get rid of these curves. There's no need to keep these anymore. One thing I want to do is kind of reduce this as well. So I'll go back to the Y. So this is about there. I'm going to do something similar. So let's just go ahead and hit the line tool. I think I'll do a little bit different design here. I think I'll go a little bit farther down. Give it a little variation here. Okay, so go ahead and select this. Hit the cutter tool. Select that. Say OK. Now this one can go away. Delete. This one is good. Now we could do it. Let's go and bring this in. Something like that. There we go. Okay. So that's cool. So let's go ahead and now select the object tool. We'll select this one. One thing I can do as well, before I do that, is use this thing to make it more smooth in the inner. And go plus, not negative. 0.005. Sounds good. Now object tool, select this, hit the EQ. Here we go. I don't think I need to do much with that. I think what would be kind of cool is to cut some things out around this though. Okay. So I think it would be kind of cool to, again, maybe we can actually go in and add a little bit more detail in here. Maybe we could put in, I think it would be kind of cool to put it like in smaller little cubes or circles, that will hold in place. So we're going to go ahead and do this again. Back to the Y. Just so many different ways you can create stuff. It's really cool. So let's just do this. And we're going to go to the pipe tool again, and it's 0.01. Say OK. And the next step would be to get rid of the curves, get my way, delete those, and we can select this object, and we can move that in. So hit the G key, use this to bring it in, something like that. I think that looks good. And I think here we're going to add some variations to this. So I'll say OK. Go to the Y key. I'm going to go ahead and select the center here, down the center, right click. And one thing I'm going to do here is kind of do something like that, mirror it, like that. Same thing here. Do something like close to the same, something like that. All right, same thing, mirror. Okay, that's okay. Another way we could do this, if it's not working the way you think it's supposed to work, select this to this to this to this to this, back to this. There we go. And we just cut through that. What I could do now is basically select the face tool. I'm going to go all the way through. There we go. We'll select this, Shift Q, Shift Q, Say okay. Now we can go in here, delete this, and now we got that little section there. Okay. All right, so that's that. Now we're going to do the same thing here. We're going to cut this with these lines. So use the cutter, say okay. Cool. Now that that's selected, we're going to use the cutter. This time we're going to select this side, say okay. And now we can get rid of these curves. There we go. Select this one, delete it. Get rid of these curves, delete those. All right, so let's go ahead and select these lines so they're rounded. I'm going to make sure that these are all rounded. So select all 4 of these, something like that. Say okay. Cool. Now we got these selected. I think what we'll do, go back to the Y. Kind of want to have some type of holding fixture for these. So go back to the Z, go back to the Y. Okay. So I'm going to bring this down. Again, this is off the center here, so why don't we just do something like here. Same thing here. Something like that. And then what I'm going to do is select this object. I'm going to cut that. This. Okay. Now that's selected. We're going to cut this with this. Okay. Cool. Now I'm going to go here. Shift D. Okay. So now let's delete one. I delete this one too. That means you got 2 of them. So Control C. All right. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to scale this up. Kind of like that. And then I'm going to cut these as well. Let's go back to the Y-axis. And I'm going to create another section here. So we're going to do something like here. Let's go and do line tool again. Something like this. Okay. So now we got this selected. Hit the cutter here. Say okay. Same thing with this one. Cutter. Something like this. Okay. Cool. So now we can delete this one. Let's get rid of that. Delete. I'm going to select these 3. Hit the Q. This becomes 1. This is going to be its own object. Alright, so we can select this, scale it, and then hit the G key, move this in just a little bit. Something like that. Bring this up a little bit. Just out. There we go. Now I'm going to actually use the edge tool. Give this some variation. Hit the control key. Okay, let's do this again. Hit the shift key on these 4. Let's go ahead and give it a chamfer. Something like that. Now hit all 8 of these. you can see through this stuff pretty good. So now we're going to do the fillet. Something like that. There we go. And one thing we're going to need is something attached to this, of course. So now we can hide this. That's cool. We'll just do something simple. Go back to the Y. And I could do something like this. Not to be perfect. It's going to be behind it anyway. Just to give it something. Alright, so we're going to hit the extrude. I'm going to go all the way through. Say OK. One thing that we can do here, again, is get rid of this, all these curves. You don't need to see any of these things. Just get in your way. Hit the face tool. Move this inward. Okay. It's okay. Bring this one. Control Z. Okay, something we could do is hide this. So you can see what you're doing. Just going to get this, bring it in a little bit. Okay. Now we're going to get these edges. We'll say OK. These edges. Shift key. There we go. Make this more rounded. Kind of like that. There we go. Say OK. So now object. This one. This one. Q, Q. Basically one object. This is your supports. Just delete this one. Let's go back to the Y. And we can unhide this one. And we're going to do a Shift D. I'm going to do a V. And we're going to go right to the axis here. We're going to rotate with R, V, Control Z. I'm going to do R again, V, and we're going to make sure we select this blue. Something like that. Cool. So this, actually take this and this. I definitely don't want that to cut through, so G key, bring it up just a smidgen, bring it back, something like that. Farther down. Try to get lined up. There we go. I think we'll go back and just delete that. Delete this. So what I'm going to do first is select this time. Select this. Q. Q tool. Say OK. So there's that. Now that I've done that, go back here. Shift D. Do a R. Go back to B. And let's rotate this around. Something like that. There we go. Cool. Alrighty. So that's done. Select these two. Let's go ahead and hit the mirror. We're going to go opposite side. Select that. Say OK. Those are held in now by that. And hide this. Alright, so what we can do now is take these 4 Get rid of this one. Now we can deleted. I'm going to do the same thing here. Mirror. So it's right. It's okay. So let's select these 4. 2, 3, 4. Hit this, and we're going to actually I think I want to select this first, then this. Hit the Q key, keep object. I just want to put holes in these things. Again, select this, hit the Q key again, keep tool. Alright, same thing. Q key, keep tool. One more time. Q key, keep tool. Alright. So now I've done that. Go in here. Select these 4. Hide those. Hide. Whoops. Hide this one. Hide. Alright. So now you got these little blocks. Just going to do the edge tool. 1, 2. This time we're going to do a chamfer because you're not going to really see that very well. I just want to give it a little bit of a kind of a looks like it's coming out of it type thing effect. It's okay. Alright, cool. So now we can actually unhide these. These are going to be lights that are being attached. Alright. So let's go ahead and do a little bit more detail on these edges now. Make it look nicer. So we're going to do a bunch of fillets. So let's go ahead and hit this edge here. This edge. This edge. And that edge. And we're going to rotate these out. More like on a positive, so say okay. So now that we got that all done, let's go and do this. Now we could do this. Did we do the bottoms? Yep. So let's go and select this. Let's pull these out. Not too much. I think point 3 is good. 0.003. Yeah, there we go. 0.02 is fine. Just want to get a little bit of roundness to it. Alright, so that's that. Undo that. We'll do one of these at a time. Give it some variation. So I'm going to go with the chamfer first this time. Just to give it a different look from the top. I'm going to bring this out just a smidgen. Maybe -6, something like that. Okay, now we go in here and select both of these. We do a Control Z. Okay, so let's go and select this and this. And now we're going to do a fillet. Surplus. With like 0.3003. Alright, so say okay. Same thing here, select this one, do the same thing. 003. Is that okay? I think that looks better. Nice edge. Okay, so we'll do a little bit something different on the top. So here we're just going to go with the Control Z. Make sure that one thing we could do here too is make sure that this is changed. We got a bunch of cuts in here, so we gotta do some variations here. Let's go ahead and hide some of these. Let's hide this one. Let's get this edge. This edge. I'm gonna make this rounded. Something like that. Cool. That was, I guess we can go to Control C on the fillet. Say okay. And we can do these other sides. Should have done all 4 of these at once, but it's okay. This one too. Zoom in. And we just Control V. Control V. Oops. Control V. Control C. Control V. Say okay. All right, cool. All right, so there's that. So now I've done all these. Let's go ahead and make this a little bit rounded, not a lot. Go to, actually, zoom in a little bit. Go back to the line tool. Cancel. Okay. Something like that. Control C. Okay. Let's do the same thing here. Control V. Control V. Say okay. All right, cool. So that's done. Let's go and get some of these proportions done right. All right, cool. So that's done. Let's go and get some of these proportions done right. Get that a little bit rounded, say okay. I think some of these things I want to bring back in as well. So let's just do this, this, oops, this. Let's bring these in close to the other ones. Okay, right over here. All right, so that's that. So let's go ahead and hide these things. Let's try and look nicer. I definitely want to do something with this as well. So let's go ahead and select this. Still got a hard edge right there. So it's going to be the same thing on this side. I'm sure it's all the way on the other side too. Here we go. Next one. There we go. Okay, again, do this in the plus. Cool. All right. So now we can select this one. We're going to do a fillet. Something like that. Okay. Cool. Coming together. Okay. So let's go ahead and do a few more things here. So let's go back to the object tool. Go back to the front. The Y. I'm going to cut this down the center. bring it through. There we go. Now what we can do is select the inner, do a cut. Let's go in with that. That worked that time. Alrighty. So one thing to note is you need to connect this to this. So the whole thing is one object. So let's go and select this, select this. One thing you could do is hide this, the H key. All right, so I'm going to connect this to this first of all. So we're going to hit the Q key twice. It becomes one object. Okay. And then we're going to hit this, this, and this. So we got 4 objects selected. Should be 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, we're going to also hit the Q key twice. Now it's one object. So whenever you select this, the whole thing's selected. Okay, cool. That just makes it easier. All right, so I'm going to give a little bit of edge to this. So let's go ahead and bring this out. The fillet. Say okay. I think that's good. I think I'll do something here too. And over here. Cancel. Doesn't want to take that. So maybe just a little bit here. .0025 is good. That's good. All right, close enough. All right. So that's cool. So when this whole thing goes up, the whole thing goes with it. It's kind of what we wanted. Definitely want to make a little bit of a there. I should have done that last time. Anyway, I'll just go ahead and do a fillet. 3 is good. Cool. And this, give it some variation. 0.00628. Okay. I think that looks good. I don't think this one went through. It should have. So select this one. 0.03 is good. 0.02 is fine. Either way, it's fine. I think this one needs to be done, and this one. Just give it a little bit of edge. 0.01. Cool. All right, it's looking good. Let's go ahead and get rid of the curve. Unhide. Unhide. I think it'd be kind of cool to add a little bit more detail. So I think I'm going to cut out some sections, bottom, just to give it some other cuts in here. It's really close to being finished. Make sure you're centered on the spline. It might not line up the way you think it does, so make sure it's centered. Okay, we can do something like that. Let's just go ahead and do 0.97. Cool. All right, so one thing we're going to do is we're going to move this down somewhere in there. Okay, so we're going to do a disk, and we're going to basically go up to something like here. So now we're going to trim. Hit the T key. T. 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 Here we go. All right, so now we got this selected. So what I could do here is make it simple. Let's do this. Select that, and then we'll select this. This way it's perfectly aligned. Right click. So now hit the line tool. This one you can delete. This one, join. That way they're together. That's one way to do it. Alright, so this is good. So I'm going to go ahead and hit the point tool. Hit the B key. Let's make this a little bit rounded. Here we go. We're going to make this into a pipe. Just like that. There we go. Okay, now I've created this. Let's go and get rid of this. Actually, that's fine. We can keep that. Okay, so I'm going to basically mirror this. So go ahead and select the object tool. Select it. Hit mirror. This is the opposite side. Say OK. There's that. Let's go ahead and get rid of those curves. Delete. Sometimes it doesn't select. Delete. Okay. So let's go ahead and do it Alt-H to hide everything. Okay, this one is too close to the edge. As you can see here, I'm hit the G key. First of all, let's select these two. Hit the Q key twice. One object. Now let's go ahead and hit the G key. Bring it down. One thing it also needs to do is come out a little bit, so let's go back to the Z. This puts this out. G. Get close to the edge of this. That's better. Okay, now go back to the Z axis. And let's go ahead and hit the radial array. And we'll select the center. Now in this one, I'm going to go down to 5. And what that does, this goes all the way around. Say OK. There's one in the center here I'm going to get rid of, which is this one. Delete it. Hit the Shift key. Hit the Control key if you actually select something that you shouldn't have. Go back to the Z key. And what I want to do is I want to kind of center this off of this. So I'm going to hit the R key. We're going to hit. This is not exactly center, so we're going to make sure we hit the V key. Let's get to the center. R key. V key. Okay, one thing we're going to do is just kind of like center that off that. There. Pretty much on the same edges. It's okay. Alright, so next thing is to bring this down to the lower section. So we're going to do the mirror key again. Go to the side. It's in the center, which is what we want. Opposite side. It's okay. Alright, so one thing I want to do is add just a little bit more detail. I think add some different type of cuts here and there. So, okay, I'm going to go to the y-axis and just add a little bit more to this. So I'm going to add some lines, basically. So I'm going to start with this side. Going to get to the side there, something like that. And then I'm going to add Control Shift D, actually, and hit the G key. And what I'm doing here is just creating just a little bit of a slice, I guess. Just like this. Then I'm going to scale it up just a little bit. S key twice. Something like that. Hit the G key twice. Say OK. So I'm going to select these two. I'm going to bring those out with the G key or move key. Bring those out. Okay, now I'm going to use the line tool again. Select the top point, bottom point, right click. Same thing with the other one. Top, bottom, right click. And one thing I'm going to do is select these hit the G key, bring this down, like that. Again, G key. Just maneuver it. I'm going to do more like a edge there. Like that. Okay, I think I'll just move that just a little bit more. That, and a little bit more here. G. Something like that. Okay. G key. Line that up. Okay. Let's go hit these. Hit the B key. I'm gonna do a fillet. Like that. Alright, I think that looks better. Do the face tool. Hit the E key. Just go ahead and bring that through. Till it goes in. Say OK. Now let's go and select the object. Mirror tool, which is Alt X. Just like that. Say OK. Select these edges here and here, here and there. This Shift key, same thing here. Just trying to make sure when I bring this in, it's going to be not too harsh. I'm going to cut. Let's go ahead and just bring it in just a little bit. I'm going to go with the plus. About there. Say OK. So one thing I'm going to do here, just to save some time, I'm going to take these two sections here, going back to the Z axis. I'm going to pull that back through. So hit the G key. We're going to cut basically close to there. Let's see, that's actually not going to work. So bring it back through a little bit more. Okay, there we go. Actually, we can bring it through. That's fine. I'm going to go ahead and now cut this. So one way to do that is to save some time. Go back to the Z. Let's go ahead and create another sphere. Delete this. I'm going to create a sphere. Make sure this is on. Control Z. Again, hit sphere. I'm going to make sure this is at 0.94. Say OK. G key. Let's go and bring this back through. Make sure it's snapping. Okay, there we go. Perfect. Now what you're going to do is we're going to select this. First, we're going to hide this other Pokemon ball at the bottom. So hide. So we're going to select this, and we're going to do an actual Q, and we're going to keep it. Say OK. Same with this one. Hit Q. This time we can delete it, so say OK. Okay, so now that's rounded. Now let's go back. Again on the Z-axis, I'm going to actually create another ball right there. 1 meter exactly. Say OK. Hit the G key again. And we're going to bring this back in. There we go. So again, select this. It's OK. Select this. Hit the Q key. And this time I'm going to hit Shift Q. Say OK. Alright, so again, we're going to hit this. Shift. Hit Q. And hit Shift Q. There we go. And what we can do is delete this, and delete this. Now you have exact sections that will fit that sphere. All right, so let's go ahead and unhide this. And hide this. Okay, basically these are objects that are going to be inside that ball. Just so I could actually add some different textures to it. Select, select, select. This one. Alright, so hit the Q key. This time I'm going to keep the tool. Say OK. We can hit the Control key to unselect that one. We could hide the other things. So go ahead and hide those. Alright, so now I'm going to select the edges of these. Select all those. So it's basically 8 of these. The Shift key. Use the left mouse button to turn it. Shift key. Shift key. Back to Shift key. Shift key. And let's make sure we got them all. Yep, got them all. Okay. So this time I'm going to use a chamfer. Go something like that. Let's go and copy this. Control C. We'll use that for later. Okay. Back to Object Tool. Go ahead and select this top section. Let's go hit these other ones now. Hit the Shift key. Shift key. Let's rotate with the mouse button. Okay, got those all selected. Again, we're going to hit the Q key. Keep tool. Say OK. And I can Control key. Deselect this one. Go ahead and hide those again. This time, select all these again. Keep hitting Shift key as you go around. Okay. Got 8 of those. Again, chamfer. I'm going to go ahead and select it now. Put Control V. Control V. Hit Tab. It's exactly the same as the bottom. Alright. Actually, I'm going to do one more thing. I'm going to create a just some more variations on around this section here. So I'm going to do that with the disk again. Go back to the Y view. Bring it closer. I'm going to get somewhere in the center here. I think what I'll do is create a line just so I make sure I'm lined up. Right, like that. Right click. Now when you do this, it should line up. So hit the circle. I'm going to select this. Hit the G key. Move it up. And what I did right there. So go ahead and hit the S twice. Something like that. We're going to try to go around this section here. Again, hit the face tool. Go ahead and select this again. Hit the E key. And we're going to bring it through. Just like that. Say OK. And now that we've done that, I'm actually going to go in, select this section here. I'm going to go with a fillet. Like that. Cool. Alright, so now select the object tool, select this. We're going to go back to the Y axis. And we're going to go back to the radio array. And we'll select in the center here. So, one thing I'm going to do is add a little bit more to it. I think something like that looks cool. Gives you about 4 around. Alright, so I'm going to say OK. Now I'm going to click off of that, select these two here, delete those. Now I'm going to select the Pokemon ball top, hit the shift key, and select all 5 of these. And then I'm going to do a Q key. Let's say OK. That's it for that. Same thing here. Select the bottom. Select each of these. Hit the shift key. I'm going to hit the Q key again. Say OK. All right. Cool. So now let's hit the line tool. Let's get these. Select every one of these. Let's do all of them at once. Sometimes they're hard to select unless you zoom in on them. So I'm going to zoom in on this one. Okay, this time I'm going to use a fillet. So I'm going to bring it through. Not too much. Yeah, that looks good. So say OK. Get rid of this one, and delete it. Okay, so I think that's it for this. The Pokemon balls created the outside shell. I like what I got, so I'm going to go ahead and go to the next video, start creating the inner compartment of this Pokemon ball. So if you like what you're seeing, please subscribe so we can continue to watch these as I move through this creation of this object. All right, thanks for joining me.